Hi, Councillor Naomi Ngugi here, and today I want to talk to us about our nervous system and how it is affected by trauma. Have you ever been told that you're too sensitive, you're too dramatic, you're too reactive, and maybe you have also been wondering, why do I react the way I do over small things? I've heard people say that their reaction is not commensurate to the situation, you know. Maybe sometimes you've also done a self-analysis and you feel like you get angry too fast or irritable too fast, and it's not commensurate to the situation at hand at that moment. And I want to give us a different perspective today, because that reaction, that seemingly high sensitivity or being dramatic may not mean that anything is wrong with you. It could just mean that your nervous system is overwhelmed, and so you end up becoming reactive, you know, because you are overwhelmed. The work of your nervous system is to keep you safe. And so when your brain senses anything that is in line with you are not safe, or it tells you I am not safe, so your brain doesn't start thinking, you know, logically or rationally. It starts thinking I am not safe. So you can either go into a freeze mode where you become paralyzed, you're not able to do anything, or fawn, which is, you know, you try to people please, you know, to keep the safety, to bring back the safety, or you can try to fight, you become angry, irritable, aggressive. When your brain is overwhelmed by trauma, it doesn't try to reason it out. It tries to get safety. So sometimes you could have gone through a traumatic experience some time ago or a long time ago, and maybe you read a certain post or you come across something and it reminds you of what you've gone through. So your brain doesn't know whether this is a post or something that happened in the past or something like that. It goes back to the time at which that incident happened. So you find yourself that maybe 10 years later, after an incident has happened, you still can't react the same way at that time the incident happened. And some of the causes of trauma, there are very many. But for example, there's death, you know, or grief trauma, when you lose a loved one, and your body can become numb, or you can, how your nervous system reacts, it's different for different people. So, for example, your body can become numb. You feel like you're not feeling anything. Some people have even said they're not sure whether they are grieving, because they feel like they're not grieving the way they should grieve, you know. But it's really your nervous system keeping you safe. So what happens when you hear the news of a death of another person? This is a totally different person from your loved one. It could be, you could even read online, you know, of somebody has passed on, because nowadays people are sharing such news online, and you find yourself going back to the same reaction that happened when you yourself, you lost a loved one. You could feel like, you know, brain fog, you know, you're not able to like think through, you know, or you could feel lazy or unmotivated, and you're wondering what's wrong with me. I mean, but it is because there are some news that you consumed that reminded you of the trauma that you have gone through in the past. And that's why it's important to deal with some of these issues when they happen, because if you don't do, your nervous system keeps the score. It doesn't forget. Yeah. So when a similar incident happens that is even totally unrelated to you, you find yourself having reactions and you're like, why am I feeling like this? So you may not even relate the two incidents, but your nervous system does relate the two incidents. And I've heard people report that when they have heard of a loss of somebody else, they got so affected, but it's because they couldn't relate that this current loss is reminding them of the previous loss, and maybe the grief process was not done, or they didn't go through the grief process. Maybe they didn't go through the grief process, and so the system, all the feelings of the previous situation, they come back, like, you start feeling how you're feeling at that time. Or some people may report that when they go to a funeral, they even become affected. So people are wondering, why is this person so affected? And even the person who has died is not related to them. It's not about the current situation, it is about the past situation. And that's why it's good to go through therapy to be able to understand how do you resolve the effects of the trauma that has happened to you in the past. Again, it's important to note that different people react differently to the same type of a trauma, for example. And trauma is not even like what happened to you. It's not necessarily what happened to you, is how did your nervous system react? And this is key to note because, again, in the issue of grief or loss, it's important to know that people will react differently, will grieve differently, depending on even the past trauma that they have gone through in life. So this is also important to note, so that you do not ask yourself, like, why am I reacting more than this person? People's nervous system are also different. Another source of trauma is actually the loss of an attachment figure. And an attachment figure is someone that you thought was safe for you, is someone maybe who used to calm your nervous system down, is someone that you used to feel safe around, was reliable, or their voice or their memory or their presence helps your nervous system settle. This could be a parent, this could be a caregiver, this could be a friend, this could be a spouse, this could be a partner. So sometimes where there is that loss of an attachment figure, your nervous system is going to react to that loss. And so it is very important for you to understand where you are at, even when there's a loss that has happened. And sometimes it doesn't even need to be the loss of a family member. It could be loss of anything. A loss is a loss, and different people will react differently or respond differently to different types of losses. It's also important to note that chronic abuse is a source of trauma. It is another source that really overwhelms your nervous system. And it's important to know this because you've heard things like healing at the crime scene, and such statements. But it's actually very important to understand, how does staying at the crime scene, so to speak, how does it affect your nervous system? How does relating with an abusive person every day for a long period of time, and this exposure to chronic abuse, how does it affect your nervous system? Some of the reasons that people may give, maybe for not seeking help in such a situation or trying to manage the situation, could actually be numbness, like they just became numb to everything. And your nervous system had to numb because dealing with the situation is so overwhelming for you. So I hear people saying, or maybe you've heard people say that, me, I don't care what happens as long as, my life is going on and everything. But at the end of the day, your nervous system cares about what is happening on a daily basis, what you're hearing on a daily basis, what you're experiencing on a daily basis. So some of the things that overwhelm your nervous system, and especially in an abusive situation or when you're going through chronic abuse, is number one, the ongoing threat. When you're always threatened, maybe I'll kill you, or you're threatened, you can't do anything, you can't leave, you can't do without this job, because abusive situations are many, even toxic working environments, or, there are various types of abuse. So that ongoing threat and the fact that there's no clear escape, you find that you feel like I don't have a way out of this situation. That can be very, very overwhelming, because now your nervous system does not know when is the threat going to come to an end. When am I going to feel safe again? So it is very important that you assess your situation and ask yourself, am I in a situation where there is no clear escape? Also, the power imbalance. Yeah, in an abusive situation, you find that there is that power imbalance. The abuser has power, and the abuser could be anybody. They feel they have power over you. So you, as the person going through abuse, you feel powerless, or you feel overpowered by them. So the fact that there's that power imbalance, it is very overwhelming to your nervous system, and you can end up being unable to make decisions. Again, it's very important to note some of these responses to the to the trauma, or to an overwhelmed nervous system. Why? Because some people, when they're trying to assist survivors of abuse, any form of abuse, and this is very common, they ask things like, why can't they just leave? I mean, they're working, they have a job. Why can't they just leave? So for you who is outside the abusive situation and your nervous system is safe and you have not faced this chronic abuse, you're able to make proper decisions, you're able to reason and see the options available. But for the person who has gone through chronic abuse for many years, they may not be in a position to make decisions. So that is a response. Another one is hypervigilance. You're always vigilant everywhere you go. It's not even about being in the crime scene. It's like there's a cloud hanging over your head all the time. And it is very unhealthy for your nervous system to always be alert, because of that hypervigilance. This is going to cause other physical illnesses and other physical conditions. So that's why it's very, very key for you to be able to assess the situation that you are in and ask yourself, how does the unpredictability of being in this situation for so long, how does it affect me? How does it affect my decision making? How does it affect how I live my daily life? How I plan even for the future? Because that unpredictability is also very overwhelming to the nervous system, and it makes you unable to think through to get to a point of making decisions that favor you. It's also important to note that childhood trauma as well is another thing that causes your nervous system to be overwhelmed. If, for example, you went through emotional neglect or inconsistent caregiving, it also has an effect on your nervous system. So sometimes you find yourself, when you feel like you are in an unpredictable situation or unstable situation, you can regress, because of the childhood trauma that you went through. Some people have gone through even sexual abuse in childhood. It is not uncommon. And you find that when they are in a situation of danger, they are not able to defend themselves because they might go into freeze mode. And these are things that we have seen. They are not uncommon. They are within us. So it's good that you assess your life and ask yourself, is it time for me to address the trauma that I've gone through in the past, experiences of pain, experiences of grief, experiences of loss, so that I'm able to deal with the issues that are happening currently in a healthy way. Otherwise, you can end up repeating patterns, but manifesting in different types of behavior, but really the concept is the same. Another important, very important thing to note, because it's very common, is lack of closure. And I've heard people saying that they didn't have closure. Maybe it's a relationship that ended and there was no closure. So your body feels waves of panic. You know, you can have waves of panic because when you are in an uncertain situation, the previous experience of lack of closure, maybe you're just left. You know, we've had cases like, for example, of narcissistic abuse, whereby you can be love bombed for a period of time, and all of a sudden this person drops you or they ghost you, and you're just left like that. No closure, no communication, no nothing. So when you're in another, and you can seem to have moved on from that, but years down the road, you can start experiencing waves of panic. And when you look through, it's because when you're in uncertain situations where there is no closure, your nervous system remembers the previous situation where you were just dropped and there was no closure, there was nothing. Maybe the other person just moved on and left you hanging and wondering what is going on. Maybe you were even trying to look for them and you couldn't find them. Or when you're in a situation of uncertainty, then you get numb, you know, because your body is unable to handle the situation. Your nervous system becomes very, very overwhelmed. And sometimes you can also feel, when you're in a place of uncertainty, you're not totally able to handle. You feel demotivated, you feel you don't want to leave the bed, and you're wondering, am I a lazy person? And some of what people now term as laziness, because they may not understand how your nervous system is responding, is actually because of some of those things like lack of closure. During the time when they were dropped and there was no closure and you're frantically looking for this person and you can't find them and everything, and you maybe just stayed in bed the whole day feeling totally paralyzed and unmotivated, it's the same thing that is going to happen when in the future you find yourself in an uncertain situation where there is lack of closure. So there are many other sources that we can talk about, but the main point of this video is for you to urge you, for me to urge you to actually look through into your life and see, how did I handle the traumatic experiences that I've gone through in the past, and how are they affecting my nervous system currently? Because people say that time heals, but what you do with the time is what heals. If the trauma has just been suppressed and maybe you just moved on, I hear people saying that this and this happened to us and we turned out okay. And sometimes it may not be okay. It may be just that you learned how to just manage. But when situations arise, you end up going back to the traumatic experience. Your nervous system can't just handle. So sometimes you may think that that one is a thing of the past. But really the past has followed you. Why? Because what happened to you doesn't go away. It remains in your nervous system. And so your brain can be overwhelmed by the current situations that you're going through. But if you deal with the issues of past trauma, then you know that in future you have empowered yourself to be able to deal with circumstances and situations very, very successfully and in a healthy manner. If this video resonates with you, you can join our trauma-informed stress management program. And this program is going to help you understand, how does your past trauma shape how you respond to stress? How can you calm down your nervous system? How can you know that your nervous system is overwhelmed, and what can you do about it? Again, this program is going to help you to develop practical tools of dealing with daily stress, because truth be told, life is unpredictable. There are stressful situations. and you need to be well empowered and equipped to know how do you handle the daily stress. And this is so important because the daily stress, if not handled well, eventually these are the things that cause other physical conditions and physical illnesses. So it's so key to understand how can I handle the daily stress, to be equipped and to be empowered to know how do I deal with past trauma and be able to handle the daily stress. You will also be able to restore your emotional clarity, your focus and your resilience. And this is so important because I've heard people say that, I used to be a strong person, I used to be a resilient person, I used to be focused, my memory used to be sharp, I could concentrate. But you find that years down the line, they have lost that. And mainly, it's because of the traumatic experiences that they have gone through. So you can still go back to that place where you were sharp, you were focused, you could concentrate, you could achieve your goals without, much difficulty because your nervous system is now repaired and you're able to do that. You will also be able to replace the survival mode with sustainable strategies that you are going to receive in this program. So instead of being in survival mode, you end up thriving psychologically, mentally. Your nervous system now starts to support you towards where you're going. And you can DM us for more information. We have an offer up to the end of February, but when you DM us, you're going to be able to give you more details.